Welcome to the moment after where we take questions from our audience from the Husbandry podcast and dig a little bit deeper into current, prior episodes that we have, or just questions that anybody has. So we have 5 questions in front of us. I got my guy Derrick Satchell here, who's going to answer some of these with me. He ain't going to leave me out here by myself. So let's tackle this first one. As a Christian husband, how much of my dissatisfaction with my wife is my responsibility as the priest of the home and the one charged to present her faultless? Derrick, I'm gonna let you go with that one first.
Thank you. I really appreciate you. Let me tackle this first. This is honestly, this is a great question. But how I would answer the question is with an analogy. So think of it like a coach's relationship, a basketball coach, Doc Rivers' relationship to the Philadelphia 76ers. In the sense that my wife has her own separate relationship with Christ. Her relationship with Christ is her responsibility in the same way that Joel Embiid's job is to put the ball in the hoop regardless of what field Doc Rivers do. But Doc Rivers sets the culture for his team. He has to do his job to put his players in the best position to win, to execute a game plan, and all those things. So I liken my role as a husband to a coach in that sense. That I have to help my wife be in the best position to pour into her in such a way that she is able to be her most Christ-like self.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'll say.
Yeah, I think when I look at the word dissatisfaction, I have a question. Is this dissatisfaction a preference, or is this dissatisfaction an actual problem? Right? And so either way, even if it's a preference or a problem, if I felt like my dissatisfaction has come through my wife in some kind of way where she is depriving me or neglecting me, I have to bring that to her. Right? And tell her and put those feelings on the table. And she's a grown up, so I don't have to give her the way that she needs to change. I just think that I just have to let her know, this is one of the things that I would love to see you do a little bit differently here or there. Now, what I cannot do is, because I am dissatisfied, begin to act in a way towards her that will sacrifice or discredit me as the priest of my home, right? So I had a situation like this previously, even in talking with my wife, and, our counselor was like, but what about long suffering? And I was like, I ain't read about that in the Bible in a while. Like, sometimes you just have to suffer long through some things while a person is getting it. So that's what I would say about that one.
Yeah, I like that. And one last thing I'll add, I think it's important to note, I kind of hinted at this earlier, but the same Holy Spirit that indwells in me, that instructs me, that leads me, that guides me. The wife is no different. My wife is no different. So
I agree with you. And I think that's the big thing. And even with my dissatisfaction, sometimes as the husband, we have to look at ourselves and ask, am I tripping about something? Right? Like, even if this is a request of mine, in the way that I'm asking about it and how I'm going about it and the gentleness I'm using, am I tripping? But then on the other end, like you said, just trusting the Holy Spirit, right? And so it's my responsibility to pray for her. It's my responsibility to hold her accountable. But it's also my responsibility to love overlooks a multitude of sins. So if I've approached you about it already, I may need to think about some other things that I can do for long suffering. Question number 2, if I'm able to provide stability, security, protection, and protection for a woman in a family, why do I need to get married? Right? So if I have the ability to provide a stable home, to provide security, protection for a woman, if I'm giving her those things, why do I have to go through this, event is what this question makes it sound like of marriage.
Yeah.
What would you say? Or you want me to tackle that first?
I'll start this one. You can take the next one first.
Okay.
So what I would say to that person who asked that question, and also this is also a really, really good question, because I feel like this is very common for a lot of people, our demographic and our age group or whatever the case may be. That just seems like more people tend to like kind of walk this line and live this kind of life where you do a lot of things that are indicative of a marriage, even though you're not married.
Yeah.
And the first thing I would say to that is, I have a question, but why not marriage? What is your aversion to marriage? And in that,
especially if you're doing all those things already. Yeah.
And in that question, I'm going to take some liberty and assume something. And this assumption comes from conversations that I've had with people, and just and just what I've seen in a lot of instances, is that we as a people, and I'm speaking specifically to men my age, older and younger, we're very scared of commitment for one reason or another. And the God of the Bible is one of commitment. He seals his relationships with his people in covenants. You see in New Testament, Old Testament, and specifically in Jesus, like our relationship with him, it's tied in Jesus. So
right.
I'm fucking getting off and I'm kind of going on a tangent, but what I'm trying to say is that I don't want people to be afraid of the commitment. Like I don't know. I'm not answering the question, but I'm still firm on like, why not marriage? So what is your aversion to marriage and commitment?
Yeah. I think this question refuses the order of things, and it puts the requirements of being a husband before the commitment, right? Marriage is about the commitment, right? Providing in all of that, in security and stability, are part of the way that you live up to the commitment.
Yeah.
So the commitment is always on top.
Yeah.
One of my favorite verses that really shows us this is in Proverbs 6, and it is verse 26. For the price of a prostitute is only a loaf of bread, but a married woman hunts down a precious life. Right? And so you can provide stability, finances, security, all of that to a prostitute. But the difference between a married woman is that the life that you're building together and the commitment that you've made to one another, that is what drives the quality of your relationship.
100%.
And if you have not made that commitment, everybody has it in the back of their head, well, I can leave out of this at any time.
Yeah.
Right, I ain't made no commitment to you. I said I'll try this out.
Yeah.
I'll do this. And so I think that that's why you step over into that idea of being married. And let's just keep it flat out real. A lot of the stuff that people are doing nowadays, if you believe in the God of the Bible, you ain't supposed to be doing that stuff unless you're married anyway. Right? And so a reason that you go and get married outside of the commitment is just about holiness and being right before God. Right? God doesn't want me. And I think that's foolish. I'm not providing and giving security and doing all this for a woman that I have no commitment to.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is simping at his, I just called them simps. I'm up here acting a fool. I mean, bruh, like what are we doing here? Right?
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that that's the big thing for me is.
One more thing, I'm sorry to cut you off before we move on to the next question. It is that, like, of course, my question still stands, so why not married? But it's also what you had said about, like, how we put, like, all these other things before the commitment. Like, you providing and you, like, giving security and all those things are ways in which you live up to the commitment. But we just kind of, like, try to subvert that or kind of get around that. But I'm thinking about, like, if I truly believe that like who God is and his omniscient and he knows all his ways are above mine and so on and so forth, then there has to be some rhyme or reason as to why he created the institution of marriage. Like there is something to that. And whether or not you know it or how you feel about it, like if you say that God is who he says he is, then you would want to honor that whatever he placed in this institution of marriage.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to say that before.
And I think it cheapens the covenant. So I'll do all this for you, but I'm scared to commit to you.
Yeah.
To me, that says, well, I just want to make sure I keep an exit door.
Yeah.
Just in case. And of course, people can get divorced, but it's a whole lot harder to go through a divorce than it is to just go through a breakup.
Yeah.
Right? You know, just in the hurdles that you have to climb and the conversations that you have to have. So those are a few reasons.
Great question.
Question number 3, do you believe that crossing the marriage threshold creates expectations and pressures that otherwise would not be there?
Before you answer, I just want to throw something. I feel like our answers are going to be really similar. I could be wrong, but I feel like the answers are going to be very similar. But you're first.
Shoot, I'm not even going to answer it. I'm just going to read from the Bible. So first of all, I am going to answer it. Yes, yes, yes. Crossing the marriage threshold creates major expectations and pressures that otherwise would not be there. And this is what Paul gets at in 1 Corinthians 7. I'm starting at verse 28. Yet those who marry will have worldly troubles, and I would spare you that. This is what I mean, brothers. The appointed time has grown very short. From now on, let those who have wives live as though they have none. So Paul is saying, we got to worry about Jesus. We got to worry about Jesus. Jesus is coming back. And listen what he says in verse 32. I want you to be free from anxieties. The unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about worldly things, how to please his wife. And his interests are divided. And the unmarried or betrothed woman is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to be holy in body and spirit. But the married woman is anxious about worldly things, how to please her husband. I say this for your own benefit, not to lay any restraint upon you, but to promote good order and to secure your undivided devotion to the Lord, right? So when you get married and you cross that threshold, you have an expectation and a pressure to please another person and to be pleasing to another person. And your interests are divided and your attention is divided. And Paul continuously uses this word anxious in there. So for me, that is a yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. I would actually say 100% I agree with you. The institution of marriage, as described all throughout the Bible, is always described as a mystery. There isn't any other person-to-person relationship, be it you and your mom, you and your brothers, your best friend, or whatever the case may be, where two people become one flesh. Yeah. So the nature of that relationship is different than any other relationship that exists. So by nature of that in and of itself, the expectation for who you are as a person, pressures, they do exist. There's no way to get around that. And I think that this is a great question, but the thing that kind of like pricks at me a little bit as I'm like thinking about the question is, sadly, I feel like we run from these expectations. We run from these pressures where we should embrace them. Like it's not a bad thing, right? Marriage is hard. It's very, very much worth it. Yeah. So to answer the question, yes, I do think that crossing the marriage threshold does create those like different expectations and pressures that wouldn't be there.
I think on that, every person has the right to choose. Yeah. Right? You know, one of the things that, not saying I would have done anything differently, but one of the things that I wish I would have done in my premarital stage is really think about, do I want my life to be structured in a way where I have to continuously care and please another person? It's a real question.
Okay.
Right? That's a real question. And it's not always about being selfish. Am I going to live up to this commitment and to this responsibility?
Yeah.
Right? Because remember, it's in sickness and health, right? You know, for better or for worse, for richer or for poor. So you're gonna have these expectations from this person and this individual consistently. I think you gotta put your big boy pants and your big girl pants on. If you're gonna step up to that plate, them expectations are gonna change.
And to your point that you said that like it's a choice, like you have the right to choose. Right. Because you like not only do you have those pressures from your spouse, like God has expectations for you as a husband, you as a wife, and I completely agree with that, right? But I think back on a Paul where he says like, I wish more of you were like as I am, right? Paul was able to fully dedicate his life and his whole being to like whatever assignment God had for him.
Right.
Traveling the world,
he had that freedom.
Had the freedom. Not many of us had, like not many of us are able to do that in a sense that I'm okay to forego a romantic relationship, right? To pursue the pursuits of the Lord with my entire being. A lot of us have that desire, that burning that he speaks of.
Right.
So in the same sense that, yeah, you do have the ability to choose whether or not you want to do this or you want to live up to those expectations. But the question boils down to is, what is easier or harder to do? Meet the expectations set before you in marriage, or live your life with this burning desire to be with some other person, both
That's
physically or like mentally or what, you know.
Yeah, because you can't cheat the process, right? Just because you can't redefine.
Yep.
And I think that's what a lot of people do. They redefine, so they don't want the anxieties, they don't want the responsibility, they don't want the problems. So instead of having a relationship that goes into a marriage, I'll just have a situationship.
Yep.
Right? I just get what I want out of the deal and don't give anything else. And that is a misuse and an abuse of how God has designed how he wants his relationship to work between men and women. All right. Question number, is this the next one? 4?
Good one.
This is a good one. Do you believe sexual compatibility is a thing and can practicing abstinence before marriage lead to marrying someone you are not sexually compatible with? Once again, yes, yes, yes. But this yes has an if. So do I believe sexual compatibility is a thing? Of course it is a thing. And can practicing abstinence or being celibate or before marriage lead to marrying someone you are not sexually compatible with? Yes, if you do not have very candid and very detailed conversations as you're approaching this married life with this individual.
Yeah.
I like this, right? Or I think I may like this, right? Or you see, because the system is broken. Yeah. So what's supposed to happen is we're both supposed to be pure and figuring it out together.
Yep.
I had a mentor of mine tell me before, when he got married, he was a virgin. And he said to me, I'm glad I didn't do it the way that y'all did it. He said, because when I first had my wife, I didn't have 31 other flavors to compare her to. I only knew of one flavor, right? And because I only knew of that one flavor gave me satisfaction because we were learning together, right? And so I think that that's for those who are pure. For people who have not been pure and have had sexual experiences before, you have to get into the conversation in 2 ways. Number 1, do not bring your worldly sexual expectations into your covenant, right? Because just like that freak that you dealt with out there ain't good enough to be your wife, you shouldn't want your wife to go be that freak, right? I'm just keeping it real, 100%. Right? Like if the freak was really that good, you would have married her,
right?
But or if the freak, or if he was that good, you would have married him, but you didn't. So don't you cannot bring those kinds of desires into your marriage and basically be telling your wife or your husband, oh yeah, the last bull.
This is what they did.
This is what they did. And I kind of like that. So I want you to learn how to, nah, bruh, sis, don't do that. And I think that you can marry somebody that you're not sexually compatible with, but I think this is when you get help, right? Like go see a sex therapist, right? And I'm gonna throw this to you real quick, Derrick, and I know people hate this verse, but this is how I know you can grow into compatibility. Now concerning the matters about which you wrote, 1 Corinthians 7, verse 1, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with, but because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So I can go to my wife and say, listen, this ain't on no, toxic masculinity type time. But I need your body to do what I wanted to do, and you need my body to do what you wanted to do. And we need to make sure that our bodies are serving one another, right? And we need to figure that out, because you have a responsibility to please me, and I have a responsibility to please you. Let's work that out together.
For sure.
I'm sorry I gave a whole sermon on
that. No.
That's
that was
a great
good.
question.
That's the pastor in you, right? But I'm smiling as I'm reading and thinking about the question. Is like, there's a few things I want to say. First thing being, and this speaks to both parties, but I'm speaking to brothers specifically. Brothers, y'all ain't as good as y'all think y'all are. I ain't gonna lie to y'all, bro. Like, y'all ain't as good as y'all think y'all are. Like, I know everybody
get your game up, bro.
You want to tell the story, you did this, and all the crazy stuff. Yeah, bro, we hear you. But the conversation that homegirl having with her homegirls is like, I ain't really like that. Yeah. It wasn't like all that. And like, not for nothing, like women are all different. So the expectations, things that one woman like versus what another one doesn't like, that's something that you would have to work out. Like, there's like no one size fit all. It's not, there's no one thing that you can do that's going to please every person. Right. And I'm thinking about that with, like, let's say you have relations with multiple women. You're gonna have to figure something new out. Maybe the first girl that you were with like this, the second girl that you were with like this. So you have to build that compatibility up just in general. So a marriage, that's no different, right? So maybe you and your husband or your wife, your spouse, is like like hand in glove fit? Yeah. But maybe you gotta figure this thing out. And that's okay though, right? Because marriage is so much more than just the physical, right? And sex is not even just the physical. It's the intimacy that you build with somebody to be able to say, hey, I didn't really like that. Or hey, can we try to do this? Or hey, can you think about this? Or whatever the case may be, right? Or the vulnerability for someone to say, hey, I didn't really like that. Like, like, and you, she ain't trying to hurt me, but like, we gotta figure this out because, this is it, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing. Honesty in a sexual relationship is a big thing. And how I would advise men, because I am a man, when you are thinking about sexual compatibility, if you were thinking about how to please your wife first, I'm sure that thing will come back around. Yeah. Right? But if you're thinking about how to get pleased first, then that's a whole nother situation that can go an entirely different way. Yeah. Right? Ask questions, right? Have that conversation. You should be talking about sex more than or just as much as you're having it. Yeah. Right? What do you like? How does this, right? Learn one another. Yeah. And so that's what I think, man. I just think, yes, it is possible to marry somebody and not be sexually compatible in the beginning. Yeah. But are you going to stay, sexually incompatible? Yeah. Or are you going to do the work to get there? If I can trust, now I'm not saying that the Holy Spirit is automatically going to make your sex amazing. Yeah. But if I can trust the Holy Spirit to do some things with my soul, I can't give him over the process to lead us into how to have great sex.
Yeah.
There may be some things that need to change. There may be some truths I need to face. Right? You know what I mean? There may be some little more foreplay that needs to happen. But if I really care about pleasing that person, man, I think that's the Holy Spirit's job to show up and make sure that gets done.
Something, and then I guess this is in closing, I don't want to take up too much time, but something that you had kind of hinted at, you spoke about earlier, is like just the level of commitment that comes from being married, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've already, like, we're in this for the long haul. Like, this is it. Bro, it forces you to, like, if I'm dealing with a person just on the street, sex was bad for me or if it was bad for her, we don't really got to talk. Like, I don't never have to see you again. Maybe I can. Maybe we can try this again. But whatever.
Glad I never had to see you again. It's embarrassing. But yeah.
we don't really gotta work nothing out. But if I'm committed to this person and we're in this for the long haul, then yeah, bro, we got, like, no, we literally have to figure, like, because we only got each other. Yeah. Right? So if this thing don't get better, we in for a long 30, 40, 50 years. Right. So we want like...
you got to figure that thing out.
It changes the attitude to want to figure it out. Yeah. I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that either. Because sometimes the conversations are uncomfortable. Right. Sometimes the conversations could make you feel or make her feel or whatever the case may be. But it's always... You always want to come at it from the perspective that, again, we're a team. We're trying to figure this out together. Like, I want this to be as enjoyable for you as it is for me and vice versa.
All right, all my people out there, we want your questions. We want to answer your questions. We want you to be conversation partners with the Husbandry podcast. So if you do have questions, email us at husbandrypodcast@gmail.com or jump in our comment section or our DMs on Instagram, and we'll get those questions and we'll answer them for you either in the episode or in the moment after, when we're sitting down with our guests or just with our team here. I hope to get your questions soon so we can bring some answers to you as soon as possible.